Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. Everybody could take their seats. My name is Michael Egan, and I am currently the president of the Myasthenia Gravis board here in Kansas City, and I just wanted to welcome all of you to our 63rd annual meeting and educational seminar. We're really thrilled because this is the first time we've had a hybrid meeting where we have all of you here in the room, and we have about 200 people signed up to be joining us on video online. So a new thing for us, but we're thrilled that we're able to pull this off this year. For those of you that are online, I'm looking back, those of you in the room, if you wonder why I'm looking past you, I'm looking at that camera to talk to them. For those of you that are online, if you signed up before October 16th, the packet should have arrived in the mail, and that's what this booklet is. If you signed up after October 16th, it's probably coming to you, or for some reason you don't get it, just please reach out to the Myasthenia Gravis office, and we'll get that sent out to you. Most of our organizational program updates, including our financial status, are listed in the program that everybody received when they came in today. But as you recall, this information is since we do the meeting so late in the year, this is for the data for 2022. So please take a look at that at your leisure, but it's last year's data because our meeting is so late in the year this year. But if you have any questions about the financial information, Derek Haverkamp is our treasurer of the board of the Myasthenia Gravis Association. Please reach out directly to Derek. I do want to say thank you to our sponsors today. We couldn't do this without you. Those of you that are in the back of the room and some of you sitting throughout here. Alexion, Argenix, Immunovant, Janssen, UCB, Catalyst, and Distinctive Meetings. Thank you so much for your generous support. As I said, we couldn't do this without you. Additionally, I just want to recognize ARJ Infusion Services for their help in issuing CEU credits for all the nurses that are watching today. So we'll have a couple different panels today. We'll have a break, and we'll keep you in schedule to make sure you have plenty to eat and drink. At the close of the meeting, we have 3 awards that we're going to be giving out. The first one is the Stackhouse Award. And the Stackhouse Award goes to someone who exemplifies the spirit of volunteerism and leadership, embodying the philosophy of the Myasthenia Gravis Association. Our second award is the Volunteer of the Year Award. And then our third award is the Diana Wilmoth Sunflower Award, which is awarded to someone who has made a lifelong difference in our organization. So please stick around for the end, and we'll give out those 3 awards. I did want to let everybody know that earlier this week, we held a board meeting, and the 2024 officers and board members were elected. The officers for this year, I'll remain Michael Egan, I'll remain as president for next year. Brody Beck, who's in the back, will be vice president. Stephanie Huber's secretary, and Derek Haverkamp is treasurer. I also would like to recognize, if you in the room, if you could please stand up. These are our additional board members. LaDonna Diller, Joe Bant, Joe standing in the back, Dr. Mamatha Pasnoor, Dr. Graham Naz is not here this morning. Al Dimit. Al is actually online, so Al, I'm looking at you. Thank you for all you do. Tom Van Sagi, Lindsay Fleiss, Ashley Steele in the back of the room, and Keith Asaley, who's also in the back of the room at the t-shirts. I just can't thank you enough for your dedication and your support for the Myasthenia Gravis Association, everything you do. It allows us to serve our mission, and we're serving over 2,500 people every year, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you to our board members. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Allison Foss, the Executive Director of the Myasthenia Gravis Association.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Good. We're thrilled that you're joining us this morning, whether you're in person or virtually. This continues to be an exciting time for the Myasthenia Gravis Association, and we wanted to offer the opportunity for you to connect with others with myasthenia gravis and hear patient stories, as well as an open forum to ask questions and hopefully get some answers. Before we get started, I want to say a huge thank you to McKenna Fulton, our community program coordinator. McKenna is in the back. McKenna joined us in January, and she's jumped right in. She's often 2 feet ahead of me, and we couldn't have accomplished what we've accomplished in the last year without McKenna. So thank you. I also want to say thank you. We have a very special guest joining us from California this morning. Sarah Bolton is our virtual host. If you participated in any of our virtual meetings, Sarah is often behind the screen hosting us. So Sarah, if you want to give a wave. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you for coming. Additionally, thank you to our board of directors, our medical advisory committee. Because we are a small organization, we rely on everybody's hands in and all hands on deck and wearing lots of hats. So we really appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you. We are also very grateful for Distinctive Meeting Group. They put on a seamless event for us this morning. Thanks for your help and hard work. As Michael said, thank you to our sponsors, Alexion, Argenix, Immunovant, UCB, Catalyst, Distinctive Meeting Group, and did I forget one? I think I got them all. Also, thank you to ARJ Infusion Services for their support in making it possible for nurses to get their CEU credits for today. I think this is the 6th or 7th year that they have offered that, so we really appreciate that support. If you're participating virtually and you have a question today, you'll be able to submit it in the chat feature, and we'll be monitoring that up here with the moderators. Also want to say one last thank you to our support group leaders. We gathered yesterday, and it's just great to connect. Our support group leaders lead our groups in many of the different areas, and we couldn't do what we do without the volunteer support. So I inadvertently made an error in the program. On page 35 with the support group leaders, Griselda Torres is misphotoed. So Griselda, I'm so sorry if you recognize that. But again, thank you to our support group leaders. We'd love your feedback after today's session, and you'll get a survey in your email if you don't mind filling it out. So with no further ado, I'm going to call Michael back to the stage to move forward with our first keynote of the day.
Thank you, Allison. And I'm really excited to lead this first panel. We have 2 distinguished members of the myasthenia gravis community with us today. We're very fortunate to have Alex Rodriguez and Glenda Thomas with us today. Alexis and Glenda are true ambassadors for the myasthenia gravis community and have made it their personal mission to raise awareness for myasthenia gravis and to provide support to individuals dealing with MG. Both have been keynote speakers at conferences, so the fact that we got him here, we're thrilled. They work with pharmaceutical companies just trying to advocate for people with MG, as well as Alexis is from Atlanta, and he runs a support group down there. Glenda is from the Boston area and runs a support group up there. Their bios are in the book. They're dynamic people. I'm thrilled to have them. If you could just welcome to the stage, Alexis and Glenda. That's right.
Do it.
I think Alexis picked our walk-up song, so have a seat. Thank you guys for being here. What we're going to do today is I have a list of questions that I'm going to talk to Alexis and Glenda about. This morning, what they're going to do is just really kind of share parts of their journey with MG and share with you some of the lessons that they learned along the way. So we just have a little bit of dialogue. We're going to go back and forth. And then we'll save a little bit of room of time at the end. And if you have any questions, we will take some questions here in the room. Or if online, if you have any questions, feel free to submit those and they'll run those up to us, okay? All right. Hi, guys. Welcome again. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, Glenda is from the Boston area, Alexis is from the Atlanta area, and they both have different journeys as far as their story with MG. So let me start with you if I could. And can you just talk through how did you become diagnosed? Tell us your story around that.
So when I was diagnosed with MG, I was also the caregiver for my mom at the time who had Alzheimer's. So my focus wasn't on me. My focus was on her. I started out with the droopy eyelids, and that was a challenge. I actually had them surgically uplifted because no one at that time thought I had MG. That was snowball into a whole bunch of things. The next thing I knew, I had the weak neck, the droopy neck. And so as I went through physical therapy, because I thought I had strained my neck exercising, that didn't help. 3 months later, I ended up going to a spine clinic, and the doctor there suggested to my PCP for me to have the blood work for MG. So she calls me and says, Glenda, I think this is what they want you to do, but I don't believe this is what you have, but that's what we'll do. So the blood work came back, and that was negative. But at the same time, now, in retrospective, I went back and I remember my mother's neurologist saying to me, Glenda, there's a neurological cause for droopy eyelids. I dismissed it because I wasn't his patient. But at that time I called him and said, I think what you thought was wrong with me may be wrong with me. Mm-hmm. I believe in staying within the same network. So he said, Glenda, do you mind if I look at your medical records? I said, no. He says, do you mind if I share your medical records with my colleagues? I said, no. That was a Wednesday evening. That Friday, I had an appointment to see a neurologist that following Wednesday. My PCP had told me, Glenda, I'm not going to make it an emergency, so you probably get to see one in 2 to 3 months. So I called my mother's neurologist my guardian medical angel. So that was when I was diagnosed. Again, I went through, had the clinical. My neurologist said, I think you have MG, but also by doing the antibodies test, I came back, I have MuSK.
MuSK, okay. And how long ago was this? How long ago were you diagnosed, approximately?
About 10 years ago.
Okay. And then how long did it take, you said from the first time you went to see with your mom and saw the doctor too, you had the diagnosis?
I'm going to say it probably was a couple of years with that going on. But then remember, I had the droopy eyelids before. So there was symptoms that I didn't pick up on earlier. So yes, that's my...
Great, well, thank you. Alexis, similar to you, question for you, because 10 years ago, how long ago were you diagnosed and what's your story?
So 26 years ago, when I was only 1. It's that new math. So 26 years ago, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, and I was diagnosed with ocular myasthenia at first. Like a lot of us, droopy eyelids, double vision. I go see a ophthalmologist, luckily a very smart ophthalmologist in Atlanta. And he said to me, I cannot fully diagnose you, but what I think you have is myasthenia gravis. Very opposite of what Glenda went, 2 years. Mine was on that first visit. Mm-hmm. And so he said, I think you should go to see a neuro-ophthalmologist or a neurologist. So I went to a neuro-ophthalmologist. And after the battery of tests that we've all gotten, including tensilon tests, I don't know if they even do it anymore, that's when she was able to say, yes, you have myasthenia gravis. So my journey started pretty quickly, right? Mm-hmm. From diagnosis and treatment, et cetera. I've gone through the roller coasters of tons of medications and treatments, to remission, to a dentist visit that did not pan out nicely, and full-blown generalized myasthenia gravis, which is where I am today. And ideally, it's been 26 years of learning, 26 years of readjusting and creating that life. Instead of work-life balance that we hear a lot, for me is life MG balance. And so yeah, that's been that journey.
Can you talk through that dental visit? Because you and I have had conversations in the past about that, and you talk about like knowing some certain drugs to stay away from. Can you tell us more about what happened?
Absolutely. So I share this story a lot because how important it is. At that time, I guess in my journey, I guess I was not as vocal as I should have been. And I had already been 2 years in full remission. 0 drugs, 0 symptoms, nothing for 2 years, not even a Tylenol, okay? I go to the dentist, just regular cleanup, and then he goes, oh, you got a little cavity back there. We need to fix that real quick. And I said, there was something about drug precaution that we needed to. He's like, no, don't worry about it. I do this all the time. And I'm like, no, there was something that we needed to be careful about. He's like, no, we'll be real quick, don't worry. So he gets me filled up with all kinds of lidocaines and novocaines and any cane that he could find that were not, if you look at the drugs to avoid, guess what, those are there. And the very next day, literally the very next day after being 2 years in full remission, I wake up and my droopy eyelids are back, my double vision is back. But now MG came back with an uglier face because it became generalized. Now my neck muscles impacted, my legs are impacted, right? So that was a big turning point for me on, no, I need to be much more vocal and express, no, wait, stop. We're gonna talk about this medication before I'm gonna open my mouth. So I share that story because we have to know when to push back and when to be our own advocates, and don't let the white coat intimidate you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to come back to that in a moment, but let's talk about treatments. Can you both talk what your treatments are today?
Yeah, so I'm on rituximab. And when I met with my doctor, he said, Glenda, here are the options we have. And I want you to go home, Google it, research, and just come back with what you think is the right drug for you. So we both kind of thought about rituximab. But I went through, again, when you're first diagnosed with MG, what do they give you? Mestinon, prednisone. That's what I started out on, right? And actually, I think I got worse. So he quickly weaned me off of that. And then I went through several rounds of IVIG. Minimal improvement. Finally, we got to the rituximab. So I think after maybe the second treatment, I felt like I was 80% better. Well, that wasn't true. That's what I was reporting, because again, I had the droopy neck, I had the droopy finger. I was torquing my body in positions that wasn't normal to just be able to stand up and walk. People said, oh, you have such good posture. Well, little did they know that I had such good posture because I was trying to stand up straight just to walk. It impacted my vocal cords because I could talk, but I went to a football game, went to yell, and it came out like I was just talking. They said, do you have any problems chewing? Any double visions? Never did I have the double vision.
Okay.
But I said no. But what I realized is that I would only eat half of my food because I would get tired. So I didn't have problems swallowing, but I would get tired of chewing. So rituximab finally kicked in. I felt better. But you're at such a weak point that even when you're like 20% improvement, wow, I feel good. So I look at myself today and I tell everybody, the Glenda you see today is not the Glenda you would have seen 10 years ago. I remember stepping back from taking pictures because my facial muscles had been impacted, and I didn't want anyone to take my picture. It's because Allison said, Glenda, send me pictures of your journey. And I'm like, there's a void there, okay? And it was an intentional void, but now I realize maybe I shouldn't have intentionally taken that void, right?
You look great now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I feel really good, and this is about 9 years of treatment with rituximab for me. Now, everybody is different. Today, I get rituximab about once a year. Another key point in me deciding what treatment I wanted, I don't like needles. I think it's a childhood thing. I finally realized I think it's a childhood thing where they used to hold you down and give you a needle. So I don't like needles. But I went with the infusion because that was only like twice a year, once a year.
How about you? Treatment similar or different?
Very different.
Okay.
Started with, I'll give you the real quick version of it. Mestinon, of course, 100 pounds worth of prednisone. Those of you who are on prednisone understand that. Then introduced Imuran, then IVIG for about 15 plus years, every 3 weeks of IVIG. And then rituximab for about 3 years on top of the IVIG and the Imuran and the Mestinon until last October of last year, I completely stopped everything and started a completely new treatment that I'm on, which is Vyvgart. And as of December of last year, I've been on only Vyvgart, nothing else.
Okay. And kind of talk through, when we've had some conversation, we talk about the whole snowflake concept, very different, you try different things. Can you just talk to the audience about kind of why, where that term comes from and why that's a challenge for people with MG because of the snowflake concept?
All of our bodies are different. Our body chemistry, what we eat, what we do, everything is different. So how I react to rituximab, you just had Alexis said, he was on it for a while, but didn't necessarily have the same reaction that I have. Allison and I talked, because we both have musk, okay? But we have a different reaction. So that is the challenge for the pharmaceutical companies to come up with the treatment, because we can't tell you the science behind it. We're going to let the doctors do that. But we all react to it differently. I don't know, you want to add something to that?
Not just how we react, which is absolutely true. It's the symptoms, the symptomatic part that we all have. I'm going to take that question. I'm going to add a little salt and pepper to it.
Of course he will. He's a pro at this.
So what I tell patients, especially newly diagnosed patients, as well as those patients who have been diagnosed for many years, equally important to identify what is the treatment that best works for you, whatever, out of all of those that are currently available. In my opinion, it's just as important, if not more important, to identify what are your triggers. If you can identify what are the triggers that are exacerbating your symptoms, guess what? You can help minimize or lessen, right, your symptoms. Now you say, well...
Can you, for the audience, just triggers, what do you mean by triggers?
Absolutely. So we hear heat and humidity. And of course, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is very hot and humid. And the stress is another trigger that will exacerbate our symptoms. But then again, it's not just heat and humidity. It could be very cold, extreme weather. And it could be foods. So identifying what triggers those symptoms literally goes hand in hand to what treatment you're going to work. I'll give you a perfect example. Heat and humidity in Atlanta, so I wear a cooling vest when I'm doing outdoor events. I have to, because it's the only way to keep my core body.
And Alexis, do you feel these things coming on so you can prepare for it? Do you have to always wear the vest? Does it hit you
So
hard?
Yes. to all of the above.
Okay.
Because it's a way of, I already know if I'm going to be spending time outside where it's hot, I'm bringing the vest with me. I'm not going to wait until it happens, right? Same thing with stressors. And by the way, good stress is still a stress. The birth of all three of my children was very happy time, but that was stress. And of course, my symptoms went crazy. So again, identifying your triggers is just equally important.
Glenda, do you have anything like the triggers that you notice?
So I don't have triggers that I noticed today,
Okay.
which is the difference between
Yeah.
Alexis and I. Like he talks about heat, and I said, bring on the heat.
Yeah.
Because I'm always cold. And we can't figure out why I'm always cold. But again, when I was diagnosed, I said I was the caregiver for my mom who had Alzheimer's. And just about a year before, or my dad had passed away who had brain cancer. So I became the caregivers for both of them at that time. So I think that, yeah, stress is probably what brought it on for me initially.
Yeah.
You know, some of the things that I remember is that I couldn't get 2 plates out of the cabinet at a time. I would have to take one out. And what really, I think my boyfriend stressed out when he saw that I tried to get a 2-pound weight and I could only get it up to here. Forget about pushing it up. So again, that's the difference. I don't necessarily have triggers that I can identify. Alexis does. But one of the things is that when you go to the doctor, you're at a weak point. As I said, I was torquing my body in positions that wasn't normal to stand up and walk. The doctor sees you at that point in time. So they're going to say, I think I can get you better, okay? But you have to think about, what was I like before? One of our MG colleagues used to be a runner, and his doctor said, I can get you back to being normal. So after about 4 or 5 years of treatment, he said to the doctor, you told me you could get me back to being normal. And he said, but I can't run. He said, I never said I'll get you back to running.
So Glenda, with that, do you recommend journaling? How do you keep track? Because can you remember how you were 10 years ago? Like, do you remember that, Glenda?
10 years ago, I don't want to remember that Glenda.
Okay.
I want to remember the Glenda maybe 20
years ago. Okay, so let's go back. I can't remember Michael 20 years ago. But how do you remember that? Because as you progressed, it would appear like, oh, maybe you couldn't do that. You didn't remember.
So I think a combination of it is, one is journaling, definitely. And so I will say journal. Write down the notes of what's happening to you. Write down how you're reacting to treatments. Write down what you can do in a day. That's very important. And then reach out to your family, your friends, to help to have them help you understand what you could do before without feeling that you were being impacted by your MG. And one of the things that I say today is look at technology. I remember saying I used to bike. And I used to have a men's racing bike, so I wanted a female's bike. So I got a female's bike. And now I'm trying to bike, and my boyfriend is biking with me, and he's 2 blocks down, and here comes Glenda, pedaling like the little girl, trying to keep up with her dad. So what did we do? We got e-bikes. Now he says, Glenda, will you slow up? So that's technology helping you to do some of the things that we used to do when we were younger. I remember mentioning to Michael that there was a year I did not get in my pool. I'm paying for it, but I can't get in it because I didn't have the strength to pull myself to walk up the steps to get out of it. So this year not as much because it rained all the summer, but I enjoyed swimming.
Nice.
I was swimming with my boyfriend in the pool. He's a stronger swimmer than I am, but I was still swimming along with him. And so these are the things that I enjoy doing. And when you're talking to your doctor, tell them what you enjoy doing and what you want to try to achieve, because that's your quality of life.
I'm going to spin off the technology part, Michael, because
Okay.
I kind of have to. So Glenda shared with us that she doesn't have pictures of herself during that period of time, right? For me, it's the total opposite, right? Instead of journaling, I'm not good at writing down my emotions, but I can take pictures. Now, most people here have at least 1,000 pictures in their cell phones when they're looking really cute on their real good, nice outfit, right? Well, if you look at my phone, you're gonna see all of, if not most of my selfies are when I'm at my worst. The reason I do that is when I go see my neurologist, he's seeing me at 9 o'clock in the morning when I'm all chipper and yay. I want him to see what Alexis looks like at 6 o'clock in the afternoon when double vision is really crazy. I have videos of me on the floor because I have fallen, and I'll just tell one of my kids, you have to film this. Mm-hmm. I need to show my doctor a video of how Alexis is trying to stand up from falling, right? So I use the technology aspect for my journaling.
But let's kind of stay on that topic, because you have to advocate for yourself, though. So if they come in, I think one of you said they treat you for what you're today, but how do you convince them or help them understand or verbalize the different you or how you were before, or where you're trying to get to? How do you advocate for yourself with the physicians?
One is, I think it's got to be the chemistry.
Okay.
You know, for me, and I was talking with a doctor the other day at the hospital, and I said, I feel like I select who's going to be a part of my medical team. Okay?
What do you mean by that? Who you select?
Well, when my neurologist, okay, well, who is this guy?
Okay.
All right? I don't know who he is. I went back to my mother's neurologist and said, well, tell me about him. Okay? He says, well, you know, we got the Red Sox, and we got Big Papi. Well, you got Big Papi.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
Not a good player.
All right. But it's still, you can be the best expert in your field, but I've got to have that chemistry with you.
Yep.
All right, and that's very important. So I feel that we have a mutual respect. There was a fellow doctor that would come in and they, you know, those pointed things, and she would dig them in my foot. And I would say, that hurts. Oh, well, it has to be that way. So my doctor learned that I was not going to let them do that to me. So when the next fellow came in and she wanted to do that, and I said no. And so she told the doctor, and he says, that's okay, we don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's understanding who I am and respecting me. Sometimes they would say, will you let me do this? And I said, no. And they said, well, will you let the doctor do it when he comes in? I said, yes. Mm-hmm. Because when I had the weak neck, when they would push on my neck, it was too much. So therefore, I felt it more, and I wasn't going to let them do it. He understood the amount of pressure that he needed to apply to test the strength of my neck, and I trust him to do that.
Okay.
So that's part of what I'm saying. You have, when I select, you know, when it came around to me having a new PCP, my neurologist gave me a list of doctors, and all of them were taking new patients. I went back to the support group. I asked the medical advisor in the support group, what about a PCP with MG patients? Glenda, you're not going to find this. Now again, this is like about 9 years ago. You're not going to find that. So just find a good PCP. To me, that's the wrong answer, because I want a PCP who has other MG patients.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I went back to my neurologist. I now have a PCP who had other MG patients. But one day she came in and said to me, Glenda, thank you. I'm like, what are you thanking me for? Because she said, you've asked me direct questions related to MG, and I had to do more research. Now, if any patients come into the practice with MG, they direct them to her.
Oh, great. Great.
So that's what I mean by, it's not just a matter of you taking whoever's available. Be sure that that person has the qualifications that you want your team member to have, and that you're comfortable with that team member, and that you feel that there's that doctor-patient relationship that's respected and trustworthy.
And look, you've helped other people who now they know they're getting some maybe more specific advice around MG, which is fantastic. Did I cut you off? Do you want to say something?
It's okay to fire your doctor, by the way. I didn't know if you know that. Yeah. I have fired 2 neurologists. They didn't do it for me, right? So you have choices. You may not have a ton of choices immediately where you live, but maybe it requires traveling a little bit, but you do have choices. Never, ever forget that, folks. You have choices. And it's okay to challenge your doctor and have a conversation. It's a two-way street. This is not the doctor telling you, here, take this, see you in 3 months. No, it should be a conversation of, this is what's happened. Here are some new treatments that are coming out. I mean, we have a slew of pharmaceuticals here with us with new treatments that are coming out. You need to be asking your doctors, do I qualify for one of these? Am I a good candidate? Why am I still on steroids after however many years? Those are the type of questions you need to be challenging your doctor with and having a conversation, not a one-way street. So, yeah, it's okay to fire a doctor if he or she is not willing to have that conversation. It's empowering yourself, speak up, speak intelligently and clearly so they can respect you.
You're in Atlanta, you're in the Boston area, Kansas City, so there's resources around. What about maybe some people in this room are specifically online if they're not in a major city?
So
how do you find that?
I was going to pick up on that a little bit.
Okay.
One of the things that I know that it's a challenge, but we need to support telehealth. Because I believe that if you're in a location, you have a neurologist, and your neurologist may not know a lot about MG, but he's a good neurologist, and he's willing to work with you, that maybe they can pair with a MG specialist. So ask them, find out who is the MG specialist that may be able to work with your neurologist and help you to understand the treatments that are good for you.
Okay.
So that's one of the things.
Telehealth, okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's resources out there, but we maybe not easily accessible, but there are ways to get that.
Just to put things in comparison, Atlanta, big city, right? There are 600 neurologists in Atlanta, okay? Out of those 600 neurologists, 60 of them are neuromuscular doctors. The other ones are the other specialists, sleep doctors, all these other neurology specialists. Out of those 60 neuromuscular doctors, less than half of them see MG patients. So, yeah, I'm glad that I live in a big city, but think about it. I'm dealing
from this to this.
Those numbers are fact-checked, okay? It's less than 20 legit neurologists in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta. If you go to, Valdosta or Columbus, Georgia, forget it. You're lucky if you have 1 or 0. So that's where the telehealth, as well as you may have to travel a little bit, comes in.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but on the same topic, when there's all this information out there where you found out about the doctors and then who specializes, which is great information. There's a lot of information out there about myasthenia gravis. How do you know and how do you guide your support groups on determining what's the really reliable source of information? Because I know there's things out there that I don't know if it's reliable. I don't know if it's accurate. Any tips?
I'm going to jump on that one real quick.
Okay.
Dr. Facebook is not a good, okay? I know there's a gazillion support groups on Dr. Facebook. They're great. They have a purpose, but they're not the know-all, end-all. Dr. Google, same thing, falls in that same category, right? We have to be careful with support groups. I know most support group leaders throughout the United States. And I know they're trying to gather the information from reliable places. And there are very reliable resources. Hey, you got one right here, MGA, yay. And they tried, I know Allison does a great job at collecting data from multiple places and ensuring that you guys are getting the best, right? So, and comes the conversation with the doctor and the talking to all these pharmaceutical companies that are here and trying to learn from them and ask them questions and probe. How do you think they started working? I mean, think about it, 10 years ago, there were one Mestinon approved medication. It wasn't until 2017 that we finally got number 2, right? But what it took was talking to these pharmaceuticals, and they listened to us, and we were saying, this is what we need, this is what I'm experiencing. And they started going, oh, well, maybe we need to pay a little more attention to the MG community. And guess what? They're here. Pick their brains, ask questions. Don't just take the little water bottle. Ask questions. What does your product do? How does it work? So I can then come to my doctor and question. That's the reliable source.
Right.
Not Dr. Facebook, not Dr. Google.
Yeah, I know you both have told me on different occasions, you have to talk to your doctors. They get this information, you might have
Right.
it, go to the source, get accurate information. But from a positive standpoint, you talked about it was 60 years with the drug,
So,
the progress that
no.
we've made. So we're in a really kind of exciting time.
This is
So
better.
if you take it, as I said, MG, the first diagnosis of MG was in 1672.
1672.
Yep.
The first FDA-approved drug was 2017.
Second
Okay.
one.
Okay,
Yeah.
Messed
second
it up.
one. Second. 2017. Today, I don't know, correct me, is it 6 drugs we have out there?
6 or 8 drugs, yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark, okay, since 2017. And there are more in the pipeline. All right, so when you ask me where are we today, I feel like we got this volcano and it's erupting,
Yep.
all right? I'm so happy that we have the drug companies that are researching, trying to understand what's causing the MG. Someone asked me, Glenda, why do you do what you do? And search for a cure. Now, sometimes when I would say that to the pharmaceutical companies, they will kind of like say, okay, Glenda. Today, I think as they're understanding MG better, finally someone said to me, Glenda, a cure is coming. It's going to take a while, but science is changing. That gives me hope to keep doing what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay? So one of the things that I strive for and I encourage you to do is tell your story. Don't be afraid to share your story. Michael had asked, how do we get involved in the things that we do? Alexis and I both are on the state, he's on Georgia and I'm on Massachusetts Rare Disease Advisory Council. And it's because we talk and we keep talking and we keep pushing.
It's her, maybe.
You see who's talking up here today, right? But, don't be afraid to tell your story. And that helps you. You'll be surprised who will come to support you. Share your stories with the pharmaceutical companies. Believe it or not, they want to hear your stories because, again, each one of us is a different snowflake.
That's right.
Well, and also, Alexis, when we talked, he's an executive at Coca-Cola, so he has a job. This is just, he does this on fun, on the side. But you even talked about it's important that your employer knows what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. So at the same time that I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, I had just started my career with that little small beverage company some of you may have heard of, Coca-Cola. And they, in my journey working with in a large corporation, it's imperative that you have a good line of communication with your supervisor, manager, director, whatever level you are, HR department, and there's some fine balances, right? Because there are 2 words that are extremely important for all of us to know, and it's reasonable accommodations. And we are all entitled or any company is required to provide those reasonable accommodations. Now, granted, I don't drive a big truck and delivering product. I'm sitting in a nice, cool office behind a computer, so that's my reasonable accommodation. I'm not in the field, right, doing exerting myself. But the point is, I've always had open lines of communications with every director, VP that I've reported to, and so they understand. And they even know that I'm here having this conversation with y'all, because it's important that they know about it. It's just what has to happen.
So one of the things there's that fear that if the company knows I have an illness, then they may use it as an excuse to eliminate me. There is that fear.
Yep.
But at the same time, this is the reason I say share your story. If you can get your company behind you in support of whatever activities you're doing for your illness, then they may join that journey with you, as Alexis have gotten Coca-Cola to do with him.
2020.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I said don't be afraid to share your story, because there are opportunities for you out there. And you just have to find the right opportunity for you to be able to flourish. When I was diagnosed with MG, as I was telling someone earlier, because Alexis had had it for 26 years, he was actually a role model for me when I came to the family. But I found an MG family, okay? So what I thought might have been a death trap, I didn't allow that to happen, and the family didn't allow it to happen. They supported me in telling my story. So look what you have here today. You're sitting around with others. Virtually, you've got others out there with you. So connect, and that's the support you have.
And thank you for sharing, because I want to lead. It's the importance of these support groups. I think in this area with the MGA support, I think we have about 18 support groups that are out there, and then Sarah runs our remote. So there's resources available. You both run support groups, but I know you've also said you kind of had to find your way through that and what your role was, and any advice for when they're looking for support groups and what they should find or look for?
I would say for me, it's finding one that's close, is convenient for you. But most of the support groups now are doing a lot of virtual. So what I find is that go online. And if there's a topic or something that is important to you, I don't care if I'm running it in New England, if Alexis is doing it in Georgia, or if it's here in Kansas, go to that support group meeting. That's the good thing about it being virtual. You get to pick.
Yeah.
So
in Atlanta, we've been hybrid since before the pandemic. Before Zoom was cool, we were doing both. We would have, it wasn't pretty, but I would hold my laptop around and hold it and go, what's your question over there? And like I said, it wasn't pretty, but we had hybrid. We had a virtual as well as in person. And our numbers, we would have 60 plus people in person and maybe 10 to 15 people online. The pandemic hit, everybody went online. Now post-pandemic, we still have that 60 plus people on Zoom. And what it did is increase our reach, because now up to 18 states join my support groups.
Right.
So yeah.
Thank you. That's good. We have about 5 minutes left. I have some additional questions, but let me just pause. Sarah's got a mic, or has a microphone in the back. Does anybody in the room have any questions that you'd like to ask? We have one up here, Sarah.
That's okay. I can talk loud.
Okay.
It's for the people in
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll repeat it back.
Oh, sorry. It's just my question's for Alexis. Did you just say that jobs must provide reasonable accommodations? Is that the law?
And the question for the people online, do companies need to provide accommodations? Is that the law?
Yeah. If you look into your state's resources for employment, if they must provide reasonable accommodations, because if not, any type of ADA type of rules go out the window. So yeah, they have to. That is a conversation that you must in your HR department, for example. Now, how does it impact maybe smaller business? I don't know, but any type of large organization will definitely abide by that.
Mm-hmm. There's another one in the back, Sarah. Do you see? Getting your steps in.
Did either one of you have a thymectomy? And if not, or if so, why and why not?
And did either one of you
Have a thymectomy.
have a thymectomy?
I didn't.
For those of you online, did either of you have a thymectomy?
No, I have not. I've had several scans, and I don't have any. There's never been any sign of thymoma or any type of issue. So no.
And that was the same thing for me.
Okay. Up here.
You said you used the VifGuard, and I've seen the side effects. And the curious thing that hits me is how many ads on TV for a very rare disease, supposedly. How expensive is that product?
And the question is, how expensive is the drug?
So I don't work for VifGuard or Argenx or any of the pharmaceutical companies. And it's not a fair question because of insurance, right? The type of insurance that I have, it's going to be different from yours. The coverage, if you're in Medicare, Medicaid, there's so many variables there. I will say, none of them are cheap, right? None of them. But yeah, it varies from person to person, just based on the type of insurance you have or not.
Right.
So,
Go ahead. Did you have a follow-up to that?
yeah, just to follow up to that, we're not going to talk about the cost of any of the pharmaceutical because, as Alexis said, they are expensive. But it's very important for you to understand your insurance, your doctor, is that your doctor covered by your insurance? If you're going to an infusion center, is your infusion center covered by your insurance? If you do home infusion, does your insurance cover home infusions? These are key things for you to understand as we're looking at any of these treatments. Okay, because everybody's insurance is different. I've had members of my support group, they may live in New England, I'm going to say to the Cape. They're going to Boston for treatment, the doctor's covered, they're trying to get treatment somewhere in between, and the infusion center is not. So these are the things that you have to understand in advance, and then that's where you have to weigh in around what's important to you, for that.
And well, after the break, the physicians that will be back on the panel, they can probably get into more details about the treatments. We stayed away from that on purpose because we know that panel's coming up here shortly. So we'll get more on that. I think we have one more question.
Yes. Is a thymectomy a thymus gland removal?
Yes, when they open your chest, there's different ways. There's 3 or 4 different variations, but a thymectomy is when they find where your thymus gland needs to be removed. And if you have a thymoma, which means you have a tumor on your thymus gland.
Yeah, I had a thymoma, and they took my thymus gland out. But then about 2 years ago, I got off all the medication, and I've been fine ever since. So I don't, like you said, you went to a dentist to have some work done, and all of a sudden you found out it was back. So this is kind of funny because I'm going to go see a dentist next week to have some work done.
So 2 things. First of all, it's interesting. You fall in the textbook category that people that have a thymectomy, it takes about 2 years to really receive the full benefits of the thymectomy, that's pretty textbook. If you'll ask the doctors about that. But the second thing you mentioned is the dentist. Here's what you must do, right? You print out the little piece of the document, and you can go to Dr. Google and print out drugs to avoid dentist myasthenia gravis. And you print that document, and before you open your mouth, you show that document to your doctor and you say, we will talk about this before anything happens, and we will discuss it. Once we feel comfortable, then I'll have my teeth clean. That's how you handle it.
The other thing I was just going to say again.
Wrap up.
Right. When I went to the dentist recently, a new dentist, do you have any patients with myasthenia gravis? That's one of the questions, and then you can go to what Alexis. But I want to know how much of education I have to do to the dentist. Great.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I'll give you one last parting comment that you want to share. Any words of wisdom, any positive hope stories that you want to share this as we wrap up?
I'm going to say journal, share your story, and that's going to be my words of wisdom.
Thank you.
I'm going to use my closing statement will be a quote by Winston Churchill. Never, never, never give up. Okay? And the last thing I'll share is you're not alone. And I say this to all the medical community. Tell people whenever you meet somebody with myasthenia gravis, they're not alone. And if they need to find somebody, they can Google MG Georgia, and I'll be there for them. Thank you.
All right, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. Great job. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey. And as they mentioned, it's different. Everybody's story is different, but hopefully they shared some insight as to things that can help some of you today and some of you online that can help you through your journeys. So right now, I'd like to have Shelly from Argenx come up. She's going to just say a few words.
Thank you so much for being here today. I want to tell you that as a person who has been working at Argenx now for the last 2.5 years, this is my favorite part of the job, which is being with the MG community because of the strength and resilience that I see in all of you, individually and as a group. So thank you so much for allowing me to just say a few words as the Global Patient Advocacy Associate Director for Argenx. I just want to tell you that everything that Alexis and Glenda shared with you today is exactly what I wanted to say to you as well. So I'm just going to reiterate some of those things. Obviously, Glenda and Alexis are the ultimate experts. I want to just reiterate some of the things that they've said. So the significance of self-advocacy is really something that I hope you can all embrace, and you are by coming here today. Self-advocacy when living with a chronic condition is critical to the success and the care of whatever the condition it is, and in this case, it's MG. The journeys that you take with MG can be really challenging. I've heard your stories. When I joined Argenx 2 years ago, I was really shocked at the lack of innovation that you had experienced over the years, as Alexis and Glenda pointed out. That innovation in treatment has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad that it is here today. But it is through self-advocacy that you can empower yourselves, regardless of what the treatment pipeline looks like, and make a positive impact on your own lives and on the lives of others. So we need to acknowledge this strength and resilience that you all have, and that living with MG really requires immense courage. And as it presents with a unique set of physical and emotional challenges, it's very difficult to share that, and for others who don't have MG to understand, even your doctors. So it is precisely because of these challenges and the difficulties for others to understand that your self-advocacy is really crucial. So self-advocacy means you don't have to come and be the presenter at a meeting, but it means a lot of different things, from very small actions and small things that you can say to others to bigger things like standing up here and sharing your story, running an organization like Allison does. But it means in voicing your concerns, your questions, seeking the best possible care and support. And nobody knows your bodies and your experiences better than yourselves. So you are the expert. When you walk into the room with your doctors, they're an expert in neurology and in neuromuscular conditions, but you are the expert in you, and your responsibility is to share that expertise with your doctor. Taking that active role in your healthcare journey is really critical. One of the key aspects of self-advocacy is also education. So coming here today is an act of self-advocacy. Knowledge is power, and the more you understand about MG, its symptoms, its treatments, and available resources, the better equipped you are to make informed choices and decisions. And educating yourselves not only empowers you, but it enables you to educate other people, your friends, your family, and sometimes even the healthcare providers that you encounter and those dentists that need to know what medicines not to use with you. Another vital component of self-advocacy is communication, and being able to share effectively your needs and your concerns and your experiences are really important in developing that personalized treatment plan with your doctor. It's really critical to make sure that once you go in and describe your symptoms, to then say so what about that? So what that I have muscle weakness. That means that I can't do XYZ in my life that's really important to me, and this is how that impacts me. It's really important to take that extra step in the story when you're talking with your medical teams. And in addition to communication and education, self-advocacy involves seeking support from others who are in this journey with you, and you have this amazing organization, and Allison and her team of people who support her in providing the support that you have in this part of the country is really uncomparable to many places in the world. So we want to be very appreciative of Allison and the team of people that are supporting her. So one other thing is that when you are able to self-advocate, you gain a sense of control and some real control that you don't necessarily recognize when you're first diagnosed with a chronic condition. You don't have a choice or control over whether or not you have the condition, but you do have a choice and the ability to choose how you respond. So being able to communicate, to connect with others like you're doing today, gather education is critical to that self-advocacy. And I lastly want to say that now is the time, if you're going to have MG, which I hope, to eradicate it and get a cure, like Glenda was talking about, but if you have it now is the time to go into your doctor's office and say, I really want to look at this, and I want to make sure that you are on the team that's going to help me to have the least amount of symptoms as possible. And now that there are many choices out there, that is something that you can ask your doctor to do with you together to make the right decisions that are specific to you as an individual. and I applaud your efforts for being here today. Please stop by all of the tables. Another way to gather information is really critically important. We love to be here. We love to talk to you and hear your stories and to provide you with information that you may be looking for. But thank you again for allowing us to sponsor an amazing event. We love Alice and we love this organization and all of the support groups we've been able to be at. So thank you.
Thank you, Shelley, and the team that's here. We really appreciate you being here and providing those kind of words of hope and advocacy. We have a video from Alexis that we'd like to just share right now. So we'll go, if we can roll that, please.
I would like to thank the Myasthenia Gravis Association for giving me today the opportunity to present to you an overview of the PREVAIL study. My name is Joachim Scholz. I'm a medical director with Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Disease and the global clinical lead for this study. It investigates gefurulimab, or Alexion 1720, which is Alexion's latest generation complement component C5 inhibitor for the treatment of myasthenia gravis. Let me spend a minute or so to introduce Alexion to you. Alexion is a truly patient-centric organization. We are dedicated to developing innovative therapies for patients with rare disease in one of 4 core therapeutic areas: neurology, hematology, nephrology, and metabolic disorders. As I mentioned, gefurulimab is a complement component inhibitor, and Alexion has more than 30 years experience in this particular field of treatment. The development of complement inhibitors for the treatment of myasthenia gravis started with eculizumab or Soliris. That medication laid the foundation for the use of this class of medications for the treatment of myasthenia gravis. The next product that Alexion developed for the treatment of this disease was ravulizumab or Ultomiris. Like Soliris, it's an infusion for intravenous administration. It has the advantage of a longer half-life. So instead of infusing the medication every 2 weeks, we can stretch the intervals, and infusions are necessary only every 8 weeks. With gefurulimab, we are entering a completely new route of administration. This medication is designed for subcutaneous injection, that is, injection under the skin. And this can be performed by the patients themselves or caregivers. We literally put the treatment of myasthenia gravis into the hands of our patients. We think this will allow them more independence and give them a greater flexibility because they are no longer tied to an infusion schedule, which requires making appointments for the administration of medications. They can administer the injections in the comfort of their homes on their own schedule. The PREVAIL study is an ambitious undertaking. It's a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, parallel study that is involving more than 100 centers in more than 20 countries. We are present around the globe, as you can see from this map, and there's actually one center close to the location of this meeting at the University of Kansas Medical Center. This slide gives you an overview of the study design. There are 3 distinct periods. It starts with the screening period of 4 weeks. During that period, the study physician will check the symptoms and signs of myasthenia gravis, perform laboratory tests to determine whether a patient is eligible to enter the treatment period. The randomized controlled treatment period is 26 weeks long, and during that treatment period, participants are assigned to one of 2 arms. They either receive the active medication, gefurulimab or Alexion 1720, or an identical formulation that does not contain the active substance. We call that a placebo. In the first 4 weeks of the randomized controlled treatment period, patients learn how to inject themselves. After that, there's a lenient schedule of additional visits. There are only 4 more visits to the clinic that are required before patients enter the open label extension. During the open label extension, every patient will receive the active medication gefurulimab. The open label extension is 105 weeks long. I should mention that during the randomized controlled treatment period, neither you or your study physician will know in which treatment arm you are, because the 2 formulations, the one containing gefurulimab and the placebo formulation, are identical. Who can join the study? Patients have to have a documented diagnosis of myasthenia gravis for at least 3 months, and they must express autoantibodies against a molecule called the acetylcholine receptor, because only these autoantibodies in myasthenia gravis activate complement, and therefore only patients with these antibodies can respond to the treatment. If patients express other autoantibodies associated with myasthenia gravis or no autoantibodies, they would not qualify for the trial. All patients must be 18 years or older, and their symptoms must involve weakness that goes beyond the eyes. So there must be some weakness affecting speaking, swallowing, movements of hands or arms, or some impairment with breathing that is caused by myasthenia gravis. I also want to mention that patients don't necessarily have to inject themselves. If there is a caregiver, like a husband, that can take care of the medication, then that's fine, as long as the caregiver is present for the duration of the trial and it is reliable that they can administer the medication for the patients. It is okay if patients have received a complement inhibitor previously, as long as they tolerated that treatment well and enough time has passed so that they are qualified to enter this trial. All complement inhibitors have an increased risk of infections that we call meningoencephalitis. Therefore, all patients in this trial must be vaccinated against this type of infection, meningococcal infection. It is also important to know that there are no costs associated with the trial. All the physical examinations, the laboratory tests, and the medication itself are covered by Alexion, so that you don't have any expenses when you join the trial. If you want to learn more about the study, you can go to prevailmgstudy.com. That's our website. You can also scan the QR code on this slide, or you visit clinicaltrials.gov. The study is registered there, and at this website, you will find more information about the study design and the participating centers. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention and your interest in the PREVAIL study.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that provided some good insight to some of you out there. At this time, we're going to take a short break. So if you'd like to, do we have about 10 minutes? 10 minutes. We'll be back in and we'll have our next panel after the break. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
I think the volume is going to go up slowly and progressively until all of us can hear me okay. We're good in the back? Yep. All right. Good sound check. Welcome to this session of the annual MGA meeting where we have a discussion, review your questions, answer them with this esteemed panel with me. But before I get started, I probably should tell you who I am. Most of you know who I am. Some of you are my patients. My name is Mazen Dimachkie. I'm a professor of neurology at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and I run the neuromuscular division. And I'm joined here by an excellent panel of MG experts, starting from the left, your right, my left. From your right, Dr. Mamatha Pasnoor, then Dr. Nathan McGraw in the middle, and right next to me here, Dr. John Eatman. So I'm going to give them the chance to introduce themselves before we get into the questions that you can pose. If you have any question, raise your hand. Someone will come to you with a microphone. This way, not only we can hear you, but the folks that have joined us by Zoom also can hear us. So without further ado, Dr. Pasnoor, do you want to start the introductions?
Sure. I'm Mamatha Pasnoor. I think some of you already know me. I work at KU. I'm a professor and a neuromuscular specialist there. I also direct the program for training the next generation of residents to become neuromuscular and neurologists. And I think my special interests are myasthenia gravis and autoimmune neuropathies. I focus a lot of my research as well as seeing patients in the clinic. So I think that's it. Welcome today. And I'm glad you're all here today. And feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pasnoor. Dr. McGraw?
I'm Nathan McGraw. I'm a neuromuscular physician at St. Luke's Physician Group and run an MGA-sponsored clinic there monthly.
Welcome. Dr. Eatman?
I'm John Eatman. I work at Advent Health Shawnee Mission. I do neuromuscular medicine as well as general neurology there, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, we can start with some question here that was posed about the standardized laboratory panel for myasthenia gravis. Why is there not a standardized lab work ordered for myasthenia gravis? Or is there one? I would add to that question. Who would like to take that question?
I can start off since I'm on this end. Standardized, by standardized, what do we mean is that we all, I think when they come to us with the symptoms, the first thing is it's always important for us to know what's going on with the patient. What are your symptoms? And then, decide, is this myasthenia gravis or is it something else? And so based on that, we order some labs. So to the question about standardized, I think there is, most of us, at least neuromuscular or even neurologists, order the acetylcholine receptor antibodies. And if, again, there are different labs do different ways. Sometimes we order it as a reflex. If that is negative, then we do the MuSK, or we order all of them at the same time. Some people order all of them, the MuSK antibody and the acetylcholine receptor antibody. And the LRP4 is a newer antibody which has been recently identified. So only a few labs do that. And it's a smaller percentage of patients that have that antibody. So that is something which we usually do if people do not have these two antibodies. But can we order it all together? Yes, we can. But most of the people have acetylcholine receptor antibodies. That's why we do that first. And if people do not have any of this, we, at least at KU, and I'm sure Dr. Eatman and Dr. McGraw do the same thing, we schedule patients also for other electrodiagnostic testing also, in addition to the lab test, to identify this condition.
Yeah, I think that covered it pretty well. The other thing too is if everything turns out negative, then the cell-based assays, which I know they do at KU and I'm sure do at Advent as well. But yeah, I have nothing else to add really to what you said, Dr. Pasnoor.
I would say there is a fairly standardized panel. I mean, I think we all kind of do the same thing. The vast majority of the patients will be seropositive for acetylcholine receptor antibodies, at least like 85%. And then of the ones left that are negative for those antibodies, about half of them will have MuSK antibodies. So, there's a way to kind of order it. Some of the labs will do this for you, but order the acetylcholine receptor antibodies first in the appropriate clinical setting. And then, should those be negative, order the MuSK antibodies if it's not already a reflex order. Should both of those be negative, then you can do LRP4, cell-based assay, things like that.
I can add another thing to that about the 6. I know the question also said there's 6 antibodies. There definitely are other antibodies which we don't recognize now, and maybe the seronegative, when we call seronegative, maybe there's another antibody which we don't recognize at this point, because the study which looked at LRP4 actually also looked at another antibody called agrin antibody, which we don't have commercially available, as far as I know, right now. And that's something which, again, in future, we may be able to identify more antibodies than this.
Wonderful. I'm sorry. Any comments? No? This is a great answer. So basically, it's a balance between doing things in a cost-effective way and the patient urgency. It's always going to be this balance that weighs into the decision-making process, because most patients will not need all 6 antibodies being tested. Most patients will be returning positive on one of them. So do you do a gunshot approach and raise the cost of healthcare at the same time? There may be reasons to do that in individual cases where there's urgency in the way of moving forward, but generally speaking, we like this sequential approach of getting a test after another. Now, you don't want to wait a year to get that completed. However, it would be nice if some of the labs, and right now we're not there yet, have a way to reflex from one test to the next to the other. There's one lab that reflexes from the acetylcholine receptor antibody that's common in 85% of all patients into the next most common one, the MuSK antibody. But I think we need more of those type of paradigms so that we can get a quicker journey towards diagnosis in patients with myasthenia gravis. Would you guys agree, and ladies? Yeah? Thank you.
Yes.
I was just summarizing what they just said in my own language. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask a question for the panel?
Absolutely.
So
you don't have to sit in the audience to ask questions.
Do you guys ever retest seronegative patients? And if so, at what time interval would you retest them? And is there a, you know, I've read retesting during an exacerbation. Is that something that's commonly done?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, because we always see that patients have been seropositive, that is, they have the antibodies, and when you're trying to enroll patients into the trials, it comes back negative. The test sometimes is negative. So you're right. I mean, you know, there are some situations, sometimes we don't usually follow the antibodies to see whether they have, when they have worsening symptoms or better. When they looked at the studies, the antibodies do not really exactly correlate with the disease in the overall population. Like, you know, if someone has high antibodies doesn't mean they have worse disease. Someone have low antibody titer doesn't mean they have less severe disease. So when they looked at overall, but when they looked at individual patients, in a patient, they can fluctuate with their symptoms. So is there some advantage in doing that? And I do sometimes repeat the antibodies if, you know, if I had a seronegative and then they have more symptoms now, or even in seropositive, like if they are getting worse, you know, there have been a few case reports that have been discussed previously of people having more than one antibody in the same person, which is rare, but it can happen. It was presented in in a few patients. It's very rare, but it can happen. So that was another reason why I would test, I would say, in patients.
Yeah, and I think retesting in that situation could be very beneficial, because no test is 100% sensitive and specific, and false negatives do occur. So I think that there could be some utility in retesting for antibodies. And for timing, I think during an exacerbation, that, and just kind of thinking through it, that would probably make the most sense in terms of when to retest.
I'll usually retest my patients every few years, but I don't know of a good clinical guideline to guide when that should necessarily be done.
Usually when I've retested my patients, it was in the context of they got the test done at a lab, and not all tests are equal. You can measure the same test result, but with different methods. And in myasthenia gravis, the method we measure the antibody titers in makes a big difference between one laboratory to another. So sometimes if you have, I'm not going to name labs, I don't want to shoot down specific labs, but I would say that there are some that are very reputable in the quality of the data we get from them. So if someone comes to me for the first time and they've had their diagnosis kind of suggested, but the antibody test was performed and was negative at a lab where the quality in my mind is not as optimal, I may go ahead and do the test in that different lab where I know the quality of that lab product is better. So that could be another reason to retest in the context of myasthenia gravis. I've not been in the practice of retesting. Part of the, in patients who are established, part of the reason that happens is that with treatment, oftentimes we end up in the scenario that Dr. Pasnoor mentioned. Sometimes patients with treatment, their antibody titers will go down low enough where they become undetectable. It doesn't change your diagnosis, would have been positive before. Once you're positive in a good reputable lab, you're always positive from there on, but then the treatment can reduce your antibody titer. But I think that Dr. Eatman poses a question that's important, we don't have the answer to, and I would be curious to hear, maybe from his experience down the road as he collects the data as to the yield of that approach.
And just to be clear, I'm only saying for patients who are seronegative, once the antibody status has been established, I think, following titers hasn't been shown to be of any clinical utility.
Thank you. Thank you. Great discussion. Now we have to go back to the patient's questions. We have one in the audience. Should we get the mic over there, please? And I will be repeating your question for those that are with us on Zoom.
Actually, Dr. Dimachkie, this one's for you and something you just said. With all of the regulation and oversight and everything else in the medical profession, why are those sketchy labs allowed to continue to operate?
So the question is about sketchy labs operating with all the regulations. So there's good quality and there's excellent quality of labs. It's not that some of them are horrible or bad. Some of them have okay quality in them, but then there's labs that have better quality. So we try to associate with our testing with labs that have the optimal quality. I abstain. All right. Now, this is an important question about clinical trials in myasthenia gravis. Anybody likes to hear about if there are clinical trials in myasthenia gravis going on? I guess yes. Yeah, I see that here. Who wants to start it? Maybe we'll start. Any volunteers? I can start it. Yeah, the answer is yes. Good. Next question.
I can do it.
Yeah, Dr. Pasnoor, you want to start it?
Do that. I can start off and you guys take over.
Sure.
So I was just looking up on clinicaltrials.gov. That's the site that you can go in and check and see what if you put in myasthenia gravis, and the number of trials that we're recruiting are more than 50 today. As of today, if you look at it. So there's a lot of research going on. But at KU, we do have quite a few research studies. We do try to be part of these exciting new trials. I mean, we were part of the Argenx, which led to the efgartigimod, a trial which led to the approval, and we were part of the Ultomiris, the Solaris, and the UCB, the two trials. As you know, it's very exciting that these are all being approved, and there are more opportunities for patients to be in these trials. And so in addition to that, so right now we do have trials in, one is, we have an Immunovant trial, which is better, I mean, I have to say it is an FcRn receptor blocker, which is, again, one of the trials that is looking at two different doses of the medications and different I would say like different duration, like they're being given biweekly, and one arm is doing weekly. And this is one of them. And then we have Alexion study, which is also going on. Dr. Dimachkie is the PI of that. And that one is also weekly. It's a C5 inhibitor. You heard that on the video also, the study going on right now. And that is a C5 a complement inhibitor. And those two studies, and then we have the UCB Pharma, the zilucoplan, which is recently approved. As you know, it has been, I mean, some of these, I think the medications, it's hard to pronounce those names, but I think it's been approved just recently, as you all know, and we're still doing the extension study of that and converting from one to another. And we also have another treatment trial, which is going on. Viala Bio company is doing a study looking at a different mechanism. This is more closer to the rituximab kind of medication. And that one is looking at CD19 cells inhibitors, and basically that works on the CD19. That's one of the ones that acts on the B cells, and so that's one of the trials that's going on. In addition to this, we also have some exciting trials, the CAR-T trials, which have been actually done mostly in cancer, and has been an exciting treatments that has been going on in cancer world, where this one is taking your cells and your T cells, basically engineering your T cells to be able to have these basically work against these antibodies, and putting them back in. And that is a placebo-controlled trial where you either get the treatment, or that's being done both in acetylcholine receptor antibodies as well as positive patients, as well as we have one in MuSK specifically for MuSK positive patients also. So these are, I mean, some of the studies enroll both out of all these studies that I mentioned. We have some studies that are enrolling both MuSK and acetylcholine, and also seronegative in some of them, but some of them have strictly only enrolling acetylcholine receptor antibodies. So we have a lot of studies going on. In addition to these, I mean, these are just some of them I mentioned, but we also have a pediatric study, a study that's going on in children from 2 years to 18 years, and that is actually a Janssen study looking at a complement inhibitor, and that's another one which is going on right now. And in addition to this, we have a few more studies that are in the pipeline that's coming up, which we didn't start up yet. They are in the startup. And keeping that aside, I would say we are also looking at another form of like exercise, also trying to help with that. It's actually using a specific electrical, I would say, like a bodysuit. It's an interesting one, but this is one of the researchers in MU wanted to try this, like increasing the fatigue and weakness in patients with MG, and look at that, and we are part of that trial, and that's coming up too. So these are some of the ones which I mentioned, but there are a lot more. I may have missed some, but very exciting time for research studies, I would say.
Yeah, and you're right, it is a very exciting time in myasthenia gravis, because there are a lot of new therapies that are being explored. At St. Luke's, we're not currently involved in any clinical trials, but I do think it's really great to have, KU is obviously very, very involved in these clinical trials, and it's a great resource in the Kansas City area. And Dr. Pasnoor, I just wanted to highlight, she did mention clinicaltrials.gov. That's where anyone can get on and check in on any clinical trials that are going on around the world, really. You can just type in myasthenia gravis, and all the studies that are recruiting or already completed or are listed on there.
Okay. So we can go to one of the questions that was posed online about, now there are 5 new treatments for myasthenia gravis as of this week. The 5th one was approved, zilucoplan. That's the one Dr. Pasnoor was trying to, Zilbrisk is the name. We're not supposed to say brand names, but it's Zilbrisk. Zylbrisq, Zylbrisk. Anyways, they keep on coming on. Rozanolixizumab is the other one. It's a tongue twister. Ristego, some of you may have heard those. And all of us know about Ultomiris, which is ravulizumab, eculizumab, and of course, we have efgartigimod, which is the other medication. So 5 different drugs. They overlap some because they work either by blocking what's called FcRn, which is basically reducing gamma globulin in your bloodstream. That's what the ultimate end product. And one of the gamma globulins in your bloodstream is the antibody, so you take down the antibody. That's one mechanism that affects 2 of them. And the other 3 are mediated through blocking what's called complement. And complement is not you saying something nice to your wife or your husband. It's more so what triggers the immune response. When the immune response occurs between the cell and the target, then in order for it to occur, complement kind of seals the deal and leads to the destruction of the nerve-muscle junction. So when you block complement with those other 3 drugs, you can have success. But the question from the audience is, well, how do I decide which one of those 5 options? And I'm suspecting we see ads on TV. You hear about those medications. You're not doing well with your MG, and now you're trying to figure out which one of those 5 drugs will I choose? Anybody? It's tough, isn't it? I mean, you're going to have to figure it out based on, well, convenience, your antibody test, because there's some restrictions there, right? The complement group of family is based on you have to have an acetylcholine receptor antibody that's positive, and you have to have generalized myasthenia gravis. And same is true for most of them, but the one newer drug, Ristego, this is the one where there's an option for MuSK-positive patients. So a lot of things go into play, but ultimately it's about, do I want something under the skin, in the vein? Do I want to get my vaccine? Some of us don't like vaccines. You have to be vaccinated for the complement drugs. So it's kind of an intense conversation that you have with your physician about, I thought of these, I looked at these, and you get material from the doctor. You read more about it when you leave the office, and you're going to have to make that decision. But maybe there are better ways of doing it. Anybody?
So, this is a wonderful problem to have in the sense that, we've got 5 FDA-approved options now for generalized myasthenia gravis with the acetylcholine receptor antibody and with Ristego. I'm not going to try to say the drug. We have an option that is FDA approved for MuSK patients, which is a really big deal in my mind. So obviously this is going to be a discussion with the patient. These are different drugs that have different risk profiles, and they're all dosed differently. Their dosing intervals are different. They generally fall into 2 categories, but even within those 2 categories, the mechanism of action may be slightly different. And obviously there's no head-to-head trial between any of these to say which one may be more effective. So some of it's going to depend on patient preference, some of it's going to depend on risk profile and patient tolerance for risk, as well as what the payer mix is and what the insurance companies will pay for. I suspect, based on what we've seen in other areas, that now that we have multiple options, including multiple options for both of the major mechanisms of actions, that the payers will start to have one preferred medication in each category. So they'll have one preferred complement inhibitor, and they'll have one preferred drug that works on the Fc receptor. And then, so of course that's going to make the decision easier in the sense that these are all extremely expensive drugs, and thus insurance coverage is crucial.
Okay. We can go to the next question. We've so far said seropositive, then you're up and next, Anne. You're after this one question. We talked about seropositive and seronegative so far. What does that mean?
So So when we discuss seropositive and seronegative, what we're talking about are those really those three antibody tests that Dr. Pasnoor alluded to earlier, which is the acetylcholine receptor antibody, the MuSK antibody, and the LRP4 antibody. As she mentioned, there's other sort of research-based antibodies that aren't commercially available. Those are sort of the standard antibodies that we test when we are suspecting myasthenia gravis. If one of those is positive, then you fall into that category of seropositive. If all of them are negative, then we try to do a little bit more digging to see if this could be what's called seronegative myasthenia gravis, meaning all three tests were negative, but we still suspect that there's myasthenia gravis present, in which case that's done through electrodiagnostic testing like repetitive nerve stimulation or single fiber EMG and cell-based assays. Those are the main tools we have to tell if it's seropositive or seronegative. It's a distinction because, as we've mentioned a few times, that there is the studies for most of the medications have been done in seropositive patients, and so that helps drive prescribing of medications. It's just good to be able to sort of know seropositive, seronegative, what type of myasthenia gravis you have.
Very good. How about we go to an audience question? We start there and then come back this way.
There are some non-motor symptoms for myasthenia gravis. Is there any push for setting up some sort of a questionnaire to follow that? And is there any clinical benefit for following those non-motor symptoms of myasthenia gravis?
I can start by repeating the question and maybe try to take a stab at the answer. It's about non-motor symptoms. So myasthenia gravis affects your mobility, your strength. Are there some investigation instruments that are being developed to test other aspects of myasthenia gravis? And the one that I can think of is fatigue. I mean, fatigue is a big one in myasthenia gravis. When you come to the clinic, your myasthenia is active, your doctor examines you, your muscle strength may be slightly weak or normal practically. So how do you really measure this kind of fatigue that goes on in myasthenia gravis? And I think this is one of the areas of interest that we have. As a matter of fact, there's a network called MGNet, and we as in Dr. Pharmakidis, one of our physicians at the KU, submitted a grant application to study a drug to measure fatigue impact of this drug. Hopefully, it can be a positive study where we can say we have something that works for that. But there could be other things. Now, myasthenia gravis has also other impacts on people. Your limitation of activity, especially if the treatment is not perfect, or as we get older, the treatment only can work so much, right? And then that limitation can make you very happy, right? I'm being sarcastic here. It can make you sad and depressed, and these are other comorbidities that come along with having a chronic disease. It's not unique to myasthenia gravis, but I don't think these have been very well studied. Anything else that you wanted to add?
So I think this is part of the kind of recognition that autoimmune diseases in general affect people in more ways than what we fully understand. Fatigue being a huge burden for myasthenics, and I believe it's the MGQOL tries to kind of quantify that a little bit more than some of the other measurements in a way to kind of decide, okay, how is this actually affecting your life, and how are some of these non-motor symptoms affecting you? And many of the clinical trials now will use that as an additional endpoint to try to see if there is a signal and improvement in non-motor symptoms as well.
Excellent. We have a question. Should we go to Anne's question? She's been very patient in the front. Sorry, ladies first, okay?
I actually have three related questions.
One at a time.
The first is, what is the incidence of common variable immunodeficiency and combined immunodeficiency among myasthenia gravis patients? The second one.
We have the expert on that here. Perfect. What's the next question? We have 3 panelists. Good.
How important is it to keep alpha interferon levels low in relation to prevent or control myasthenia gravis?
Dr. McGraw did a fellowship on interferonopathies, actually. No, I'm just kidding. He's going to take that question. And what's the last question for Dr. Pasnoor?
And what is the best way to engage one's neurologist and immunologist in coordinating care for this condition?
Very important. Yes, Dr. Pasnoor will answer that. Where should we start? Interferon question or combined variable immunodeficiency and myasthenia gravis, 2 autoimmune diseases. What do you think generally? Have you seen that in your clinic?
I have seen, I think, probably 1 or 2 people, but I do not know what the incidence is.
Yeah. So it's not unusual, and we've looked at that. There was a case series of several thousand patients around the nation of patients with myasthenia gravis that have been collected, looking at not only history of autoimmune disease in the patient themselves, but in their family members. And it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of patients with myasthenia gravis have associated autoimmune disease in their family members or in themselves. So it's kind of a high number, and it has to do with your genetics. Your genetics predispose you to autoimmunity. Now, clearly, combined variable immunodeficiency is its own bird, but I would suspect there would be a reason to have an increased risk. Was it one of the top ones in that study? It wasn't. All right, we can go to the next question.
About interferons?
Interferons, yes.
We don't use a medication specifically targeted at interferons, as far as I'm aware. And alpha interferon is not something standard that I measure, like and track specifically in terms of myasthenia gravis.
Yeah. So yeah, interferon are, by the way, are a very exciting area of the immune system right now. There's a lot of data on interferon signature in patients with muscle disease, myositis. We know very little about it in myasthenia gravis. Thank you for this great question. Maybe we should investigate that. Dr. Pasnoor?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing that you asked about immunologists and us working together. In neuromuscular, we do work closely with them. I know they haven't been looking at myasthenia gravis, but like Dr. Dimachkie said, some of our patients do have other autoimmune conditions along with this, and they do see our rheumatologists who are immunologists and KU. Did you say rheumatologist? Rheumatologists. Some of them. So some of them are trained in immunology also, the rheumatology. They basically look at other autoimmune conditions. At KU, there's a...
So the question is about, it's a private question I will answer at the break later on about names of rheumatologists at KU that are double trained in allergy and immunology. Thank you. Yeah. We'll go to the next question in the audience there.
It's great that we have the 5 new medications for generalized myasthenia, but if you only are seronegative for ocular, how do you then dose any of those 5 for people with just ocular myasthenia gravis?
Right. So the question now is about applicability of those novel therapies, since all 5 of them, are for generalized myasthenia gravis, not just ocular myasthenia gravis. So how do you approach that? Is there a way to get those medications? Have you been successful in getting those medications in patients who are only ocular? And then you add a twist to it. What if ocular and seronegative, right?
Yeah, so I think that's an excellent question, because most of the studies do not include patients with just ocular symptoms. They want generalized myasthenia gravis. So it would be nice to include that, but there have been studies that were targeted just at ocular MG in the past, and we were one of the sites, and it was very difficult to enroll patients into that. And in fact, the plan was to to have 80 patients enrolled into that study, but we ended up having only 11 patients total. And so it's very hard to have a study specifically in that. So normally if you look at the recent guidelines, the ocular MG, they do suggest using other immunosuppressive medications. Previously it was people used to use Mestinon, and that's it for some patients. But there has been more recommendations on using steroids after that small study showed some benefit with steroids. And then, now they also recommend, if they have trouble with their daily activities, or if it's causing other issues, with the steroids, use other immunosuppressive therapies earlier on. So this has been the recent guidelines. They did include that. So as far as the newer medications, again, I think it's individual, for patient by patient, depends on how the patient's, their comorbidities. We look at other things and we do try it, but again, it depends on the insurance. It's very difficult for the insurance to approve that for these conditions. So I think we need more studies in that, but unfortunately they cannot have a study specifically in ocular MG, and maybe they can just include that in the other and do a sub-analysis for future.
We have a question over there.
In response to the gentleman who was asking about looking at fatigue, I am participating in a study that is managed by, I believe, the North Carolina medical system, and this test comes out of England. But it's unique in that the testing uses your cell phone to participate, which is a great benefit to me who does not live close to a medical center. Every month you have to report in. You take a picture of your eyes, you use your arms, you use your legs, you use your voice to show the strength of it, and you respond to some online questions in regard to your mental health state, your eating, your sleeping, and so on. And this is a one-year study. So there is something that is going on that is addressing that.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. So we have other questions about what vaccines to take for some of the novel therapies. And this isn't specific to the complement inhibitor class. What vaccines are patients supposed to get?
So the way the complement inhibitors work, the complement system fights against a specific type of bacteria, and in particular, can increase your risk if we block that system of having meningitis, specifically from a bacteria called Neisseria meningitidis. And so it's required to get vaccines at least 2 weeks prior to initiation of the complement inhibitors against Neisseria meningitidis to sort of mitigate that risk.
Okay. Now, what about food and supplements in myasthenia gravis? What's the panel's recommendation? I can read the question. My neurologist refuses to talk about foods that should be avoided and supplements and vitamins that will help with treating myasthenia gravis, as well as foods that will help and vitamin minerals to avoid. Any advice? Will you refuse to talk about that? So, any takers?
I don't refuse to talk about anything. Obviously, I don't think any of us do. But, as far as a specific diet, I'm not aware of any specific diet that has any, clinical trial validation. But obviously, we do know what type of diets are healthy and which ones are not. So trying to eat a healthy, balanced diet, trying to avoid hypoglycemia, avoid the typical diet. and I know that is easier said than done, and I'll be the first to say that my diet is not the best, but we should all try to achieve that just in general for our health. So that would be my recommendation for my myasthenic patients is try to eat a healthy diet. We kind of know what a healthy diet is. Mm-hmm. As far as supplements go, When it comes to supplements, there's all kinds of stuff out there, and I encourage patients to come talk to me about it. I'm in a non-judgmental way. I think the first thing I do is I will research. Okay, is this something that is likely to be harmful? Obviously, I don't want my patients taking any type of supplement that is potentially harmful. And that includes financially harmful. I mean, is this a extremely expensive exotic supplement that's going to financially drain the patient? If it's something that is unlikely to be harmful, I'm a bit more open-minded. But like I said, it's an individual supplement by supplement basis.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the answer. Now, when we talk about diet, and we'll get to the next question from the audience here in a second, but one of the questions online was about steroids. How long should I stay on steroids? So in the context of steroids, what kind of diet do you recommend? And should we use steroids nowadays for myasthenia gravis? We have novel therapies. How long should I stay on them? Forever? A day? A month? A year? Anybody would like to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. Again, steroids have a lot of side effects, but at the same time, they do work faster than some of the medications we know of. And again, the cost is also, you have to remember, is not as expensive as some of the other medications. Again, we don't want to keep patients on high dose for long term, because what is high dose? Again, is 20 high dose, is 40 high dose? But studies have shown, like, if you're 10 and below 10, it's the side effects are less compared to when you are on higher than that. And again, it's individual patient too. I mean, some patients have osteoporosis and they need to be off of that. We need to try to get you off of and try to do other medications. So it depends on an individual. I think overall, we have to remember that MG treatments should be more individualized to a certain patients. Not everything works for everyone. So steroids are still good, I would say, with all the new medications. We like to use, but now we have more options than what we had before. So the other thing is, like, with the insurance, we always have trouble if you don't use some of these medications which have been already, in the market and have been used before, like steroids or Mestinon or, maybe another immunosuppressants. And if we don't use that and we directly, want to use one of the newer medications that has been approved, and then those get denied. We see that denial quite often, and I'm sure Judy Ray, who works on our nurse who works on the approval process, sees that all the time. We find great difficulty in getting it approved unless you're on one of these. So I think a few things drive that. So your comorbidities, the patient preference also, and we want to keep you at a very low dose. 10 and below 10 would be better. And how long? Again, we'd like to get you off, but some people may need a smaller dose, and they're not on any other medications. If you're on 5 and been stable, your bone density didn't change, and you're didn't need any other medications, maybe we'll leave you on it for a longer time. So it depends on individual person. And as far as diet, when you're on steroids, again, we definitely want to make sure you avoid starches and the regular diabetic. We sometimes suggest like a diabetic diet if you're on higher doses of steroids. And we usually use higher doses of steroids when someone is having worse symptoms, like after a crisis. Maybe we start off on higher doses and then taper you down.
Yep. So no cookies while you're on steroids. Anybody took cookies from outside? I have to return them now. Okay, well, there's a guilty party there. But there's a question in the back.
I do like cookies, by the way. Would you please speak with us about medically managing incidents of stress and anxiety? Or in another way of putting it, when I watch the news, can I pop a Xanax?
Okay. Dr. Eatman.
Oh, thank you for giving me that question.
I'm anxious now.
Chronic disease, and I tell my patients this, chronic disease comes with a level of anxiety. And that has to be acknowledged, and that has to also be treated if necessary. Being on steroids comes with a degree of anxiety that is often dose dependent. A personal story, when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I had to be on high-dose steroids for I believe it was 60 to 80 milligrams for over a year per day. And I still feel bad for my parents because of, it made me agitated, it made me anxious. So usually I will work with the patient's primary care doctor, or in some cases, a psychiatrist, as well as I am a big advocate of therapy as well. As far as popping a Xanax, I do tend to be wary of things that could suppress respiratory drive in patients who have myasthenia gravis. I mean, that is obviously, concerning besides the, other concerns about benzodiazepines in general. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And then what about medical marijuana or cannabinoids? This is one of the questions from the audience online that was asked. Are there studies or evidence for where it helps the myasthenia gravis specifically? And of course, people can take it for different reasons, and there could be some benefits. And there are also state regulations and federal regulations around all these things we're talking about. But understanding we're not trying to advocate for these. Now, in myasthenia gravis, when it comes to the muscle weakness of myasthenia gravis, what evidence do we have on it helping people with MG?
As far as I know, I don't think there's any evidence at this point to show that there is any benefit. Or at the same time, I don't know that there is any study done, to see if it helps or it doesn't help,
It is an area that's very difficult to study. As you mentioned, there's a lot of regulations, federal regulations, so I think that limits the studies that are done in that area.
I think as long as it is federally illegal, there's not going to be research on this, and maybe over the next 10 years, there will be some sort of, change in that. Right now we've got this gray area where, in certain states it's legal for certain things, but we have to remember that no matter whether it's legal or not in the state, the federal law can override that, and then federal law, it is still illegal. And so we're not gonna see a lot of research on that until that changes.
All right, thank you. We can go to a question about self-monitoring of disease. How would you advise patients here in the audience to watch out to make sure that their myasthenia gravis is under good control? And when should they then hit the panic button, either call their doctor or go to the emergency room, which is a practical question.
I think it's really important because obviously the patient knows their body better than anyone else, and so just monitoring your typical symptoms of double vision, droopy eyelids, keeping an eye on those things, and then when you really want to present to the emergency department is if your breathing or swallowing is starting to become affected, if it's becoming dangerous for you to swallow food or liquids, like you're choking frequently, that's an indication to go to the emergency room. If you're getting so short of breath that you're having trouble catching your breath even at rest, that's another indication to go to the emergency room. But if you're noticing, other than those two conditions, that things are just sort of generally slowing down, or getting a little bit worse over time, then I always encourage my patients to call in and we can discuss over the phone and see, do we need to make a change to your medications? Do I need to get you into the clinic soon so we can get another exam? Those are the things that you want to look out for.
Is there an instrument that we use in the clinic, Dr. Pasnoor, that patients can easily use at home? Yeah. I mean, a couple of them on the MGFA website, right, with the app on your phone that you can check your MG. Some of you may be doing that. Yeah. Dr. Pasnoor, what other advice do we have in addition to Dr. McGraw's valuable advice?
Yeah, I think like Dr. McGraw said, you know your body better than us, so everyone knows, if there is a change, I always tell my patients, like, I know I give a follow-up appointment 6 months, but if something changes, call us before that, because we understand that myasthenia gravis is a fluctuating disease and can change. And sometimes when you call, our nurses do talk to you and get an MG-ADL score, which is one of the scores that we use in the clinic to see what it was. It's more of an objective way to see what you had before and what is it changed now from what you had before. So it just gives us a way to know, and this does include some of the fatigue stuff, like, things like are you able to brush your hair, or do you need rest periods in between because of the fatigue with that. So some of those nurses do when they call you, and sometimes they send you with the list of that for you to fill it out and give us information, like send us the information, especially if you're on infusions, to see if you have improved on that infusion or not. So that is one of the scale that has been really used in all the trials and has been used as an outcome measure, and we use it in our clinic, and we use it every time you come to the clinic, as well as send even when you call in with changes in your symptoms.
Thank you. Now, there's a question about a follow-up question, which is very specific to a patient case scenario that was posed online. Now, we don't answer specific management questions to individual patients, but without doing so, let me read the question, and maybe there's some value to some of the answers that transcend the individual case scenario here. I've been on prednisone for 2.5 years since my diagnosis. IVIG and Vyvgart did not help. None of the treatments work 100% of the time, right? Currently on CellCept for over a month. I have osteoporosis. How and when can I reduce or stop prednisone, currently on 10 milligrams daily? So this is if I put it in more generic terms, I'm on prednisone. I have osteoporosis. What should I do? How is that?
Well, I think the first thing is talking to your doctor and see if you can come down on the prednisone. And looks like, according to the question, they just started the CellCept 1 month ago. It does take some time to kick in, as we all know, with the CellCept, and hoping that, I'm thinking your doctor might have started that to take the place of the prednisone in future. So again, I think it's probably a discussion with your doctor and you to see when they can taper it down further.
Any comments on osteoporosis and prednisone? How would you approach that part from the osteoporosis angle and maybe from the prednisone angle when suitable?
So obviously you want to coordinate with their primary care doctor, make sure they're getting regular DEXA scans. If they do have osteoporosis, make sure that osteoporosis is being treated as a way to kind of mitigate fracture risk. I think everybody who treats myasthenia gravis is kind of on the same page that we're trying to minimize cumulative steroid exposure. But at the same time, you want to be smart about it. The reason that we use steroids is because myasthenia is a serious disease, and even though steroids have side effects, they're still the main part of the mainstay of treatment. You don't want to titrate down so fast that you end up getting exacerbation and then you're right back up on high dose. And I think that the lower your dose gets, especially once you get around 5 milligrams a day, you've got to be very cautious trying to lower it anymore. The medications that we use for adjunctive therapy, not talking about the newer medications, but the ones like CellCept and azathioprine, take anywhere from 6 months to 12 months to really see an effect. I wish it wasn't that way, but steroids, you just have to be cautious.
Thank you. Now, one of the things that we consider as physicians, and we know the obvious answer to, is the effect of steroids on your blood sugar. There's a question about that posed online. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, so you need to monitor your blood sugars very closely when you're on the steroids. Again, monitoring if you're at 10 or below 10, your blood sugars may not be as high, but again, I think you need to work closely with your primary care physician to monitor the blood sugars. If you're on higher levels, they might even ask you to monitor daily at home. But again, it depends on how high you are on that. Or some people have already had a few levels checked and it was normal, and they may not check it that often. But I think when you're initially started, it would be good to check your blood sugars closely and work with your primary physician on that.
And so a question about pyridostigmine that came up online. How good is it for MG patients? You may know it as mestinon, pyridostigmine. Yeah.
Yeah, pyridostigmine is a useful medication in myasthenia gravis, and I always, when I discuss this in clinic, try to make a distinction that it helps with the symptoms. It doesn't help with the underlying disease process. The way that medication works, it will help mitigate some of your symptoms like double vision, droopy eyelids, even weakness, but ultimately it's not treating the underlying disorder, but it is helpful for symptom management.
Another question about correlations between MG and other diseases. Does it correlate with other autoimmune conditions? And listed in the question online is, that's why I'm looking down, that's where the questions are. Rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or Parkinson's disease. Now, I did not know Parkinson's disease was an autoimmune disease. Nonetheless, that is the question. Any takers?
So, well, I think we already discussed about the rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. Those are the other autoimmune conditions, as Dr. Dimachkie had already mentioned, that there is usually people who have one autoimmune conditions, the chances of having another autoimmune conditions is slightly higher than the general population. However, Parkinson's is a degenerative condition, so it is not it is a neurodegenerative condition. It's not an autoimmune condition. So we don't, I would say there's no specific correlation. And saying that I do have patients who have both Parkinson's and MG, but there is no study or no correlation that we could find specifically saying that there is an increased incidence in Parkinson's of MG or MG in Parkinson's either way. I don't see there is like a specific correlation that we know of.
Very good. I think this may be our last question at this point in time. Maybe there's a last question back there.
From Glenda.
Okay, my question's related to prednisone. We know the prednisone is a treatment, and it seems to be an effective treatment for MG. But we also had a member of our MG community, as a result of long-term use of prednisone, have a liver transplant and now may be facing a kidney transplant. So is there any steps that, as a patient, we should advocate for ourselves around tests to monitor, if we're on long-term prednisone for?
Thank you for your question. So I'll repeat it. There is a question about experience, and I'm going to ask the panel about that, about patients with myasthenia gravis getting steroids, getting liver transplant and kidney transplant. I've yet to have one, but maybe the panel knows of a patient as a result of prednisone. There have been other reasons for that, but and then how would you manage that, panelists?
I have to say, I don't think I've seen any patient having that. But coming back to like how to monitor, definitely all our patients, we do recommend like yearly monitoring with the primary physician, like getting the regular blood work includes CBC and CMP, which is part of it is liver functions and kidney functions. So that definitely, and if someone is on higher doses, we do more frequent testing of the blood. So that should give us some information. And I'm not aware of like steroids specifically causing it, but definitely the other medications like IVIG we do monthly labs on those patients because there is a risk of kidney issues with IVIG, and there's risk of clotting. So we do, and if you look at azathioprine, which can cause liver abnormalities. So if they're on some of those medications, we do more frequent testing. Initially, we start off with monthly and then maybe transition to every other month, but they get routine labs with that. But people who are on just steroids, again, maybe I don't think we do that frequent testing, but at least once a year, and maybe even every 6 months. If they are on higher doses, it will be even more frequent.
Thank you. Thank you. We went over by a few minutes, but that was an important last question to take. Thank you for all your questions. I want to thank the people online for their questions, the moderators, the discussants here. Thank you, panelists, for answering those questions. We'll give them a round of applause. And at this point in time, I'm supposed to turn it over to our fearless leader, Allison.
Thank you all for all your participation this morning. So grateful that you've been here and tuned in, and hopefully you're connecting with some other people in the MG community. We want to take a moment this morning as we begin our award ceremony to reflect and honor the lives of William and Joan Stackhouse, our founders. Since our last meeting, they have both passed away. William passed away in November of 2022, and Joan passed away on March 1st, 2023. I had the privilege of meeting the Stackhouses in March of 2022 at their home in Pasadena, California. I can honestly stand here and tell you it was one of the most powerful days in my career and in my life. Their vision for supporting all of us in the community is what's brought us here today. I learned more from that day with them than probably my entire time that I've spent at this organization. So really feel privileged that I had that opportunity, and wish you could have all met them as well. They lived a life of service, and we're grateful for the foundation that they've set. This morning we are going to award the Stackhouse Award. I'm going to turn that over to Michael.
Thank you. As Allison said, we were very fortunate to have the Stackhouse, Dr. and Mrs. Stackhouse as a part of our community. And because of that, we just really feel it's important to continue to honor their memory. And so each year we give out the Stackhouse Award. So this award is given to recognize the outstanding leadership, dedication, commitment of furthering the cause of supporting all those affected by myasthenia gravis. It's presented to highlight the exemplary spirit of volunteerism, leadership embodied in the philosophy of Joan Stackhouse and her husband, Reverend William Stackhouse, who were the founders of our organization. So for the award today, if you've done anything on the internet associated with myasthenia gravis, it's likely you've seen Donna Whitaker's posts, comments, or shares. Diagnosed with MG as a child, Donna is an internet icon for myasthenia gravis and a leader for many in the community. The MGA is fortunate that she lives nearby because she's regular at groups and events. In late 2022, Donna broached the idea of bringing back the St. Joseph, Missouri support group, and she's done just that. The MGA is grateful for Donna's leadership through the years and her dedication in revitalizing a group that once existed. In addition, Donna was a previous member of the board of directors. She regularly contributes to our blogs and is quick to connect those who are newly diagnosed with our organization. And many times, Donna's entire family has been involved with MG and sharing their commitment and generosity. So I'd like Donna to come up and receive the Stackhouse Award, please. Congratulations. Do you want to just meet her?
And then Tom's going to take our picture.
Got it. Let me just, why don't you go ahead right
Congratulations. Michael, you going to come?
there? Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Donna. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't know if the mic.
I don't think we have you mic'd up, but we'll have lunch and.
I just wanted to say that I was diagnosed in 1957. I connected with MGA in 1977. And it's all my activities online is what Alexis said, so other people wouldn't be alone with MG. That's been my mission.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, getting down? Okay. Okay, our second award is the Volunteer of the Year Award. And this year we're awarding that to Brian Bosch. Brian has been living with myasthenia gravis for over 7 years. During his fierce battle with myasthenia gravis, he's also dedicated time to volunteering for the association. Each year, Brian makes items of dragon, blanket, other things for our raffle and events. And he and his partner also are big supporters and volunteers for the Kansas City Support Group. Brian is quick to always jump in and lend a hand, even working the table today in the back.
We had to pull him in here.
That's right. And through his leadership, the MG Pride Virtual Group was born in 2023. He successfully led the group since the spring, connecting patients and ensuring they feel supported. Brian has jumped in to help numerous times when we were short-staffed and helped us bridge the gap. So congratulations, Brian, for being volunteer of the award. If you'll come up. This is. We always make you work. You bet. Congratulations. That's great.
Congratulations. You're very good. Michael, you want to?
Okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
One more award. One more award. And this is the Diana Wilmoth Sunflower Award. This award goes to, and actually, Diana's in the back room. Raise your hand. She supported us for many, 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 many years. And we have, since that time, we now have an award named after her. And this award is, the Sunflower Award was established in 2019 in honor of our longtime volunteer, Diana. This award is given to an individual who's achieved and made a lifetime difference to our organization through leadership, giving, volunteerism, and spirit by helping those with myasthenia gravis fulfill their potential and help them live their best lives. Lisa Sakovich is our award winner today. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here today, but I did want to just read a little bit about Lisa. Lisa served on the board of the Myasthenia Gravis Association for more than 35 years. She retired just this spring. She wore many hats in the organization and helped steer this organization during the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Her leadership and commitment are ingrained in the foundation of the MGA and will be felt for many years to come. While serving on the MGA board of directors, she was also leading and growing her company, ARJ Infusion. The MGA is forever grateful for Lisa's leadership, support, and service. And we wouldn't be here today without people like Lisa and Diana and others that have helped us get to where we are today. So I wish she was here today, but let's just have a round of applause for Lisa.
Thank you, everybody tuning in online. That concludes our online portion. You'll get a survey in about an hour. We would appreciate your feedback. For everybody attending in person, we have lunch waiting for you out where you registered. We're going to make things simple and have you just bring your lunch back in here instead of going across the hall. So if you want to get your lunch and meet somebody new too.
And I just want to say thank you to our executive director, Allison, and McKenna, who is running around somewhere. That's our staff. Oh, there she is. McKenna, stand up, please. She hides in the back. They do so much to help us. And that's our staff. These two people do all these things with, and of course, all the volunteers that are out there helping us. We couldn't do it without that, but these two dynamic duo are just incredible. And so I just thank you both for everything you do to help us. So thank you. Have a great day. Thank you all so much for coming. All of you online, thank you for being here too. Have a great day. Enjoy lunch.
One last thing, Keith will have T-shirts and such for sale in the back. And then if you didn't get any of the freebies, there's still some out on the tables out by the lunch. So, and then please talk to sponsors if you haven't already and hear about the new products. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and thank you to our vendors in the back, the sponsors so much. Thank you.